Hello and welcome to Digital Signage Explored. My name is Tim from Signagelive, and joining me today for the first time we have a person in the building, Noel from Bluefin.
Good afternoon. Wait, hold on. Yes.
Good afternoon. Thanks for... Oh, my watch ran out of battery like yesterday. I'm just wearing this for effect. Thanks very much for coming down.
No, good to be here. Looking forward to it.
How far have you had to drive to come visit today?
Just Sheffield, not too far.
That's a long drive, though.
An easy drive down the A1.
That's an easy drive for someone that drives a lot. For me, that's like 2.5 hours.
The issue is lorries that pull out at 56 miles per hour.
Yeah. That will slow you
That's
down.
the problem.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate you coming down.
Sure.
We've actually had another employee from Bluefin before. We had Frank on just as he moved in. So we talked. No pressure at all. We can kind of A/B test the two different episodes, but we were coming down anyway to do some bits and pieces, and we thought, why not take the opportunity, talk a little bit about digital signage. Do you want to give like a bit of an elevator pitch on Bluefin to start with, just so people know what it is?
So for Bluefin, we are a custom digital display manufacturer. Mm-hmm. And the beauty that we have really is that we have intelligence under the display. Yeah. So from that side, we've got your likes of your BrightSign inside our displays or Intel inside, which allows you to run your CMS of choice. Clearly, where we are right now, you would pick Signagelive. Mm-hmm. But you can run anything on our displays, or you can just run via HDMI. But the beauty is that we sit in a space that's slightly different to the other mainline manufacturers. So we look at 55 and downwards, really, in types of display sizes, 16 by 9 and ultra wide. But we've got a real good flexibility into create a display that a end user system needs.
Yeah. And I think when I was talking to Frank, and from what I understand with Bluefin, there's quite a lot of customization even at low scale.
100%.
Yes,
It's a flexibility that we have in warehouse in Amsterdam. We have a number of displays that we can chop and change as to what's inside them really quickly and easily. So if somebody does decide that they don't want BrightSign inside and they want Intel inside, for example, we can just change a card. Yeah, we don't have to build a whole new display.
And this is a good question for me because I don't know the answer to this. Is what tends to be driving that decision between the two? Is it just existing devices or existing preferences?
Pretty much. It's usually because the customer that the system integrator is talking to has already got some experience of CMS platform and has used platform A, so they need it to run on system B.
Okay, and then it's just like, well, they work with Intel, so we'll use those, or they work with BrightSign, we'll use that, and just take the guts in and put that into the product.
And most CMS platforms work on one of those two factors, right?
Yeah, 100%.
So the other one that we have, obviously, is Linux and the Android areas, which also tick a lot of boxes for people.
The thing that we're going to be talking today about is a case study which we discussed, which is, we're allowed to say GHD, right? That's an out there case study.
Internet.
You can go and find it. We'll put a link. And you can have a view, which is a really interesting case study. It's kind of taking in a lot of the use cases together of different topics that we've had on the show so far. Okay, so you're talking about Nextmosphere, which has been discussed, and we've had Ivo on before and talked about that. And then you've got obviously the Bluefin devices and a little bit more kind of an experiential design for people to get involved with. But what was really interesting about this GHD experience is it kind of brings all those pieces together and wraps it in a bow by saying, this is what we're trying to achieve. So do you want to kind of go into what the current experience they set up is? And I'll put some pictures in here as we go through.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, GHD is a really good case study for us and our partners at Lime. They have an installation that sits on your high street in your John Lewis partners and Selfridges and businesses like that. That it's the perfect signage solution. You don't really realize it's there. Right. So it's part of your retail experience that you can go up to the GHD stand. You can see the advertising medium on the display, but as you come up to it, it changes and it becomes a mirrored display that allows you to pick up and style your hair with the GHD product, so you know what it looks like as you're styling your hair. Right, important stuff. But what they originally started looking at was a display with a mirror in front of it. Right. And then, thankfully, Lime had the nous and the knowledge to say, do you actually want to do that? Or can you look at a proper solution that's a mirrored display and it's built for purpose? Yeah. And that's what Bluefin do, right? We build displays for purpose because we can. Yeah. So we've got that flexibility. So they put a side-by-side which gave you that view of actually content pushed through a high bright display through a mirrored panel doesn't look anywhere near as good as a display that's built for that purpose. Sure. A mirrored display. So thankfully, GHD understood that. They then deployed that, and so they have a solution now that allows you to go about your shopping, catch the messaging via eye, go up closer to the stand, change to a mirror. It instructs you on screen. It's like, hey, good hair days, pick a device. You can pick one up, and then you can see a little bit more about what that looks like. On top of all of that side of things, they have the stand set up in a way that it's like your dressing table.
Right, yeah.
Right? So with lights on the side. Now, in high traffic areas, those lights are on all the time. But in lower traffic areas, or if the store's not so busy, they can go off so that it really can light up as you get close to it.
Yeah.
You're like, oh, what is that? I'm going to look at that.
Yeah, so you got kind of like that a track loop as
100%.
well as that you've got energy saving. Because, when you don't have people near there, you don't need to have all those lights on. Yeah, that's really interesting. And what I've seen a couple of videos of this now running, and what I really like about the design style is that it's non-intrusive messaging, and it's advertising, but in the right time and place.
Exactly.
So, you go into a lot of these like makeup stores and things like that. They have tons of digital signage and things like that. They're trying to promote whatever it might be, but it's not intrinsically smart with what's in front of you at the time.
Yeah, it's one of the things that's really bugged me just for digital signage world is that, and this is before I came into Bluefin, but you walk around and you see so many displays, like literally everywhere.
Yeah.
Everywhere you go. And Frank at Bluefin's, and he nudges you as you're walking around a high street going, there's displays in there, there's displays in there.
Yeah.
Come on, Frank, I know I can see them. But you start to then become a little bit screen blind because everything's 16:9, everything's 55 inches or 65 inches. And it's like, okay, well, I'm not really paying much attention to it. As soon as you can change that or make it a little bit more experiential where something does happen, or it's in a different size, or it's ultra wide, or it's at an angle, or I don't know, anything else, it draws attention to it. And that's the ultimate goal, right? Is for the people that are buying digital signage for their retail or for their business or for commercial or whatever it is. It's for people to look at it and pay attention.
Yeah. And funnily enough, because you and I were talking about social media, just on a whim, talking about LinkedIn and things like that, and what our best practices are and the way that we approach it. And I think retail almost have exactly the same thing, where once everyone's doing the same thing, it's time to change what you're doing.
You do.
Like if it must be like 10, 15 years ago now, where, a 16:9 screen in a retail space was quite like, oh, that's quite unique.
Yep.
Now it's just the norm. So what can you do to expand upon that or change upon that? I had a conversation with Jenny Hicks from Midwich back at ISE last year along the same thing, which was actually more about smaller boutique stores and what they could do to just add value rather than just go buy a screen, put it up, put a USB stick and that kind of thing. And she was a big advocate for, spherical screens, which I know you guys kind of have a look at and you've got that running.
We do, yeah. So we've just built a round/circular screen with BrightSign inside it, 23.6 inches. It is very, very high quality glass. Yeah. Because it has to be.
Yes.
So, it's a high quality unit, but it's like a window to the world. Yeah. It really is.
One of my favorite use cases, I've mentioned this before on the show, but you had at, I think it was ISE last year, you had that, I've seen that screen around, they've seen the circular screen. It's been around for a little while. But I never saw the use case where what you did was just plonk it on its side and made it a table.
So in Infocom, they had it as a table.
That was it,
There's loads of things you can do with that. We have got a touch version of it as well, but by default, it's non-touch.
Yeah.
But it enables you at that point to put all sorts of interesting content. And it could be related to what you're putting on the
like a glass
top,
with an RFID or something. There's so many cool concepts that built in. And
but you've got to remember that used to be done by an overhead projector or something like that. And it was cool, right? 4 or 5 years ago. It's great, but you couldn't really see it and the area had to be dark. And,
there's a lot of limitations with the projector. Yeah.
There's your screen.
Yeah. No, really cool. And this is just, from GHD's perspective, I mean, was this something that they said, look, we're starting from scratch, or was it a project that they had started before and kind of it had bottomed out? Because I know sometimes
I'm not entirely sure about the history of. So clearly GHD are well ahead of the times with the technologies that they use.
Sure.
Which is a good place for them to be. So they kind of push that all the time, which means that they know and understand how to get that dwell time, so people do come and pick up the product, do get involved with it, end up buying it ultimately, which is their goal. So I think they spend a lot of money and a lot of time and effort globally, as you can see from any of their PR, that they're focused on intelligent use of technology in a good hair day, right? It's ultimately what they're trying to do.
Yeah, I mean, I do agree, and I do find it fascinating because we have a lot of conversations with different retail outlets, and they're I think of all of the different industries, QSR are pretty much there, right? If I was starting a QSR today, I'd be like, well, I need some screens to show my menu content. Unless you're a very, very small boutique or startup, it's quite defaulted to see it across the board. Yeah. Retail, I think, has the most variety, and depending on what kind of store you go to. Like Tesco's is a good example where recently I've just started to see them pick up on that. They're starting to put digital signage in, which is which is funny because it's a slow-moving beast, right?
Yeah, I don't know about the supermarkets, because a lot of the supermarket retail digital signage is probably run via the product set that's going into that space.
Sure, yeah, 100%.
So, it could be the Walker's Crisps or the Coke or the vape or whatever else is going in there.
Yeah.
Rather than your Sainsbury's, Tesco's, Waitrose.
You're not promoting Tesco's.
Yeah, let's put exactly that.
Yeah.
So I think it's that, it's your marketing technique, right? It's like, give us $5,000 and we'll put a screen in for you, which advertises your content.
Yeah, 100%.
They'll get 5 seconds every minute.
Yeah,
So.
and it is dependent as well on the brand. Like, as you say, like GHD is more like a kind of a high-end quality product. So they can invest their time because they're adding value to that brand. So you as a buyer buy into that experience. Whereas, and I was talking to a guy called Marco who does a lot of these kind of installs across Europe. And he just said, I would never even look at something this complex for a lower case brand, because they put that value into the product to make it as cheap as possible. Whereas GHD or like an Apple or something like that, they have to present themselves.
It is. And, that's the case for everything in a retail environment, that businesses want to put a level of quality on it, generally, or they're trying to sell thousands of units at a really dirt cheap price.
Yeah.
There's no real in between there. And so your likes of your GHDs and your Dysons and
Dyson's a good one, yeah.
Super like expensive vacuum, like I saw a Samsung vacuum cleaner, because this is what I look at nowadays, for 900 quid.
Yeah.
It's a vacuum cleaner. Does it suck better than the other vacuum cleaner? Probably not. Right?
Yeah.
But there's some dust particles and there's an intelligent advert and there's some loads of right. So I'm now like, actually, well, it must be good. So you get into that mindset because information's being pushed at you, and so you're like, yeah, okay, maybe I'll get onto that. But for the GHDs of the world, they're in a box of their own when it comes to hair products, right?
Yeah.
And hair, not necessarily hair care products, but whatever people use for their hair. 'Cause I don't know the ins and outs.
No comment.
Far easier.
No comment at all. It is fascinating to see these changes, and I think we're going to see way more of that from other kind of top end brands. Not that it hasn't happened in the past, but it's more about you can't just put a screen in the wall and then say, oh, we're going to be clever with the content. We're not going to make the content, it's relevant based on time, and all these kinds of things have just been existed for so long now. And although, from a CMS perspective, we still talk about it, we still market it, because there are a surprisingly large amount of people that look at digital signage for the first time, and it really is like a fresh slate. Like, they don't know what the product can do. So sometimes marketing is just re-communicating the same thing over and over again. But for those that are more au fait, and the technology's been around long enough now where people might be into their second or their third cycle of hardware, they're going, okay, well, how can we pull a little bit more value out of this? And how can we make this just more impactful to that user experience? And what I really like about the GHD one is, it said, like, it's non-intrusive, but it's intrusive at the right time.
Correct.
It jumps in and goes, oh, hold on, this is information you could really use. And once we're done here, this can become a mirror again. Yeah. And that's a really cool way of building the product.
Is, because they've done really well. They've got a space. They know the space. They know the product. They know where it sits. You can buy it from the shelf underneath. So it really services in a massive department store. Yeah. It services that little space.
Well, we're talking about cost as well, because obviously there's an additional cost for getting the sensors. There's an additional cost for building out the technology. There's an additional cost for having digital signage in the first place. But then you also look at, not to say that we remove all humans out of the equation, but there's a lot of self-service that then becomes part of that, where I can go up, I can learn about the product. My decision of influence can be changed without having a human interaction. And as you say, the product's there to buy. I take it and I purchase it. If you have 4 or 5 of these things, whatever kind of kiosk setup that you build, you can actually start self-serving a lot more footfall with a lot less employees to do that.
You can, and especially when that comes into the QR codes and the touch screens, entering a bit of data, and you can do that with a smaller screen on the side of that allows somebody to walk up to it, put the details in and send it, or to scan a QR code, get 20% off because it's Tuesday and we've not sold many of them today.
Sure,
so, we can do these sorts of things and flex it. And so it's just building that right premise to get that footfall time, dwell time, purchase time, everything that you want, all bundled into one, so they can get 150 quid out for your hair straighteners.
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, that is the end goal, is to get that product off the shelves. And I was talking to Giles from Cloud. Have you bumped into Cloud Shelf at all?
I don't think so.
Okay, it'll be maybe an interesting conversation for you guys, but basically a Shopify application for digital signage. So you can just say, take my entire Shopify store, put it on a screen that's touchscreen that I can purchase there and then.
Yeah, cool.
So one of the big things that they were looking at was this kind of hub and spoke approach of saying, you've got your big retailers, they've got their major store center. And then actually, because purchasing is easier closer to home, they have these kind of small spokes out into smaller towns and villages. And then you've got your interactive kiosk. So if you want a product that isn't there, it's actually in the distribution center or where the major area, then they can just ship it same day. So if you think of that example, and then you build in the technology that you guys have done in kind of partnership, is you could have like a completely experiential center, which is the smallest footfall, the smallest employee rate, the least cost, and still has access to all of the products that are available there. That's a really cool experience.
Yeah, precisely. And, with the intelligence, we sit at the front in the display terms because it's a display and somebody interacts with it. But the intelligence that you get from the CMS package, with the sensors that are built into everything that can then send data to a warehouse that could be robotic, that's moving product around, that suddenly goes into a van that's an e-van that drives 200 miles down the road and drops off your house.
We're in the future.
Yeah.
All of a sudden, we're in the future.
We're all over it.
I was thinking about that the other day, where I was just like, without realizing it, we've jumped into the future. Like, we always look at it through the lens of digital signage, but even just looking at my phone, I was talking to my kids about it, and I was just like, you don't understand. Like, this piece of glass in my hand is the most intelligent thing I have ever. There used to be space programs about like intercoms that didn't work as well as this thing does.
I know, it's crazy, right?
So it's mad. But listen, Noel, thank you so much for coming on. Where can people find you?
You can find me on LinkedIn, Noel Kennedy. You can find me on X, Noel on Tech, and pretty much everywhere else.
Yeah.
any medium.
Perfect. We appreciate you coming on. Thanks very much.
Welcome.
We'll see you on the next one.
Awesome.
Cheers, mate.
Thanks.